That's how you get Episcopalians' attention.
So, thank you for your self-introduction, Mother. So, Mother Robin is going to invite us to be here, and she's going to start off with a small prayer to make sure we're successful today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Gracious God, we give you thanks for this wonderful day. We give you thanks for stewards of our environment, for ministers of our creation, people like Matt and Thaddeus who work so tirelessly to do what God has commanded us from the very beginning, which is take care of this fragile island, our fragile earth, our island home. So we ask your blessings on this endeavor today. Please bless all the folks who are here, and bless us as we go forward to learn how we can help these folks do the best stewardship care of our earth as we can. In the name of Christ, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Brother Robin. I will introduce Matt again with a little bit more flourish, if you will. Matt and I was it 2016 when he joined the Breathe Project, and I was already involved with a group called Allegheny County Clean Air Now, which we'll see some of that a little bit later. So when you retire, what else do you do besides play golf or tennis? You deal with the environment, don't you? At least I did. Patrick's here. Thank you, Patrick. So we have a few. So I'm going to introduce Matt, and I'll introduce some of the other people who are showing up here. Again, Matt has been in charge of the Breathe Project. It's an umbrella organization for well over 40 environmental groups in Southwest Pennsylvania and beyond. It's a challenge. It's sort of like herding cats, I think. But I'm part of a group that's called grassroots organization. So we don't have any paid staff. For the most part, we don't. We're all volunteers. So Matt, we just had a meeting on Friday in Beaver, the Beaver Station, and Matt was in charge of that, or he helped make it run. And we were focusing on, guess what's in Beaver County?
Shell plant.
The shell plant, yes. Shell plant. And there's a whole array of things that we're trying to do to get them to do the right thing, and maybe even leave, but we won't talk about that. But Matt has been with us for a while. He shows up everywhere. He's on all the Zoom calls. I can't believe even if he's in the car going somewhere to teach at CMU, he's on a Zoom call with us. And we think he needs some rest. Again, he's a double degree PhD in engineering. Thank God there are people like him that want to go further their engineering program. I didn't. And he teaches at CMU in sustainability. And he was, before the Breathe Project, he was 10 years in sustainable business learning. So he has his feet and his head in the right place. So with that, I'm going to introduce Matt and let him take over.
Okay. Thank you, Thaddeus. I appreciate it. Thank you all, St. Brendan's, for inviting me here today. It's great to be here this morning. I don't know how many of you wake up in the morning and say, air quality, that's the thing I want to learn about, but today it's my hope to convince you that it is something that will happen. And so I want to keep this. I have a whole array of facts and data, but we also have video and stories, and then we want to have a conversation this morning. So folks here should feel free at any time to raise your hand if you want me to explain anything further or just react to what's being shared. There's a lot that we can do here today. It's best if it's interactive. And for folks who know Thaddeus is a very persuasive individual. Thaddeus is someone who inspires many people, and I've learned a lot from him over the years of how you can move the needle in places where you don't think it's even a possibility. So I want to thank Thaddeus for all of his inspiration and work and for guiding us, and so thank you very much, Thaddeus. Thank you for Okay, so the Breathe Project, Thaddeus said a little bit about it. We exist as a collaborative. It includes community groups all throughout southwestern Pennsylvania. These are frontline community members that are dealing with health effects of pollution, air quality. It's also the best science that we have here regionally, so some of the best air quality scientists, public health professionals, people from School of Public Health here, and then also it includes environmental groups that may have attorneys or lawyers, or they do policy work, or they advocate in Harrisburg or at the county or at the EPA to make things change. So the big question is, well, why does it take all of this for air quality? And that's just a question I'll put out there, and then maybe at the end you might get a flavor for why it takes all of that work to change the needle. So the first part of today, I just want to start with some background about, well, what is the state of our air quality, and then from there, we'll develop some themes from there. So here's the first thing that people need to remember. We still have a serious air quality problem in our region, and then adding anything additional to it is only going to cause further harms. So what do I mean by, bad air quality? So everyone's familiar with the air quality index. Most phone apps now have this, where you can see what the air quality index is. This is an index created by the EPA that has a scale of 0 to 50 if it's a good air day, and then moderate yellow range if it's from 50 to 100, and then orange from 100 to 150. People who have health issues that are impacted, that are more sensitive to air pollution, that's an orange day. Red day is the air is unhealthy for everybody, and purple is very unhealthy. And by the way, these standards are going to be updated. That's just an announcement 3 weeks ago that these standards will be improved, made more restrictive going forward. But we'll talk more about that in a second. But if you look at this chart going back to 2018, and there's a little asterisk by 2023 because that data hasn't been finalized with the EPA stamp of approval. That happens in May, but we can still get the data and see what it looks like. And what you can see here is, maybe it's gotten a little bit cleaner on the green and maybe a little bit better on the yellow, but you can see the orange and red, over the past 5 years, our air has just improved very modestly. And some of the variation, some years it rains more and that makes it a little better. 2020 is the best year here. And so much was shut down during the pandemic that had a pretty big impact there, and you can see it kind of bounce back in the wrong direction after that. This is some data that helps us see what's going on with air quality. And then this is last year, 2023, every day of the year, and one of these circles is if the air quality index is being driven by particles. The black dots are whether ozone is driving that index. And you can see, there are periods of time where, wildfires in the summertime, and then you can also see these periods in the fall and the spring where we have more temperature inversions. That's when warm air comes in, it traps pollution at the surface. That tends to happen more in the fall and the spring for what that happens. And so you can see, how our air days over last year look. Now this is a chart that was created by the CREATE Lab, one of our partners at Carnegie Mellon. And what they do is they look to see where our region ranks relative to all other parts of the country with air monitors. There's about 800 places throughout the country. And how often we appear in the top 10 list of worst air sheds or #1 worst for at least some portion of the day. And what these statistics are showing, if you look at last year, about 10% of all of our days in 2023, we were the #1 worst air shed in the country for at least a portion of the day. And if you go back several years, this goes back to 2021, you know, in all those days, so there wasn't really that much difference between last year and the last 4 years. Number one worst. This is whether we're in the top 10. About a third of our days, last year and, you know, the past several days, we were in the top 10 worst air sheds. And then this is the last month, you know, and the year to date. So you can see, you know, we still have a lot to do when it comes to air quality. Here's a question.
Yeah, just a quick question about the Allegheny County data.
Yeah.
Is that aggregated from several points of measurement, or is it a single point of measurement? And just...
Yeah, so there are 8 monitors that monitor particles and 4 monitors that monitor ozone throughout Allegheny County. The ones that we have Liberty Clareton here singled out because that is, you know, in proximity to the most polluting sources. And then Allegheny County includes all of those monitors. So you can see in Allegheny County, yes, the Mon Valley is a driver of air pollution, but not all of our bad air days are driven by the Mon Valley. Our second biggest area of pollution is the Neville Island area. There's a lot of industrial sources there. And so you'll see, you know, the air quality index be driven by things that happen in the Neville Island area as well too. Now the vast source, the largest source of pollution comes from the Mon Valley, but the whole county is impacted by that. Yeah.
Can you tell me why Allegheny County measurements? Yeah, why Allegheny County measurements seem worse than Pittsburgh overall?
Yeah, it's
I mean, isn't it more diluted? Isn't it more? Is it the fracking that's more prevalent outside of Pittsburgh?
So Pittsburgh, what you need to know about Pittsburgh.
Repeat his question.
Oh yeah, so the question here is why is Allegheny County worse than Pittsburgh? So this Pittsburgh, this is something, because I copied this, the nuance isn't there. Pittsburgh refers to the metropolitan Pittsburgh regional airshed that extends all the way to West Virginia and all the way that includes Greensburg. Okay, and so that's why you see these things, and a lot of these areas don't, you know, trigger the air quality index to be in the top 10. The worst air pollution in the region is concentrated in Allegheny County, by far. In fact, we know from monitors that surround Allegheny County, the air over the last 10 years has gotten about 40% cleaner outside Allegheny County from the closure of many coal-fired power plants that have happened over time, including Cheswick in the county, but places like Bruce Mansfield and plants in Ohio and West Virginia that have closed has definitely improved the air in the larger airshed. But that's why you see the difference. This is not the city of Pittsburgh. This is the Pittsburgh metropolitan.
What's in the name? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. If you look at our air monitors, okay, and you average them and compared the Allegheny County Pittsburgh airshed with other parts of the country, on average, our region is about the 25th percentile. This is where Seattle falls, New York City. Okay, and this is the point I like to make, is that you don't hear New Yorkers get up and say, smell that great New York air, right? This shows you the reference points of what we're talking about. Boston's all the way up here. So this, you know, Pittsburgh, when I first started doing this, we were down here at the 6th percentile, okay? So it's gotten a little bit better, but some of that is because of the closure of those upwind power plants, and also because of wildfire smoke in the Pacific Northwest has shifted many places on the west coast here, and the east coast has generally gotten cleaner with the closure of those plants. So yes, this is a little better, but it's not because what we're doing here is anything that's particularly great in the county, and that's where we need to see some things change. I've also mapped the monitors, the 8 monitors of our county, where they would fall on the spectrum. And you can see here, this is the Liberty monitor. This is still at about the 6th percentile. The air is worse than about 94% of the country. This is North Braddock. This is Parkway East. This one, I believe, is Lawrenceville, and then here is Avalon. You know, this monitor here is the North Park monitor. So those of us in the North Hills generally have the best air in the county, relatively speaking. But, you know, that is on an annual average basis. There are days, though, where we experience bad air quality up here in the North Hills. And so I mentioned the EPA about 3 weeks ago announced that they were improving the annual average exposure standard for fine particles. The prior standard was set in the year 2012, and that annual average was 12 micrograms per cubic meter on average exposure. Really, you take a 3-year average to see whether or not you're meeting that standard. They've just changed that to be 9 micrograms per cubic meter. So they've improved the standard because of the research that shows public health exposure to particles at those concentrations is still unhealthy. Now what I'll say is we're now almost at the Canadian standard. The Canadian standard is 8.8 micrograms per cubic meter. But the World Health Organization has set that standard at 5. So we are still not, near where the broadest support for public health would suggest where that standard should be set, where the World Health Organization is. So even though this has been improved, we still, are not where the full public health evidence suggests where we should be. And this is showing that with this new standard, using the 2020 to 2022 data, we're one of a few places that will not be meeting that new standard, okay? You can see, even with this new standard, the vast majority of the country can meet this new standard. There are a few places like in California, and then, Allegheny County, the Cleveland area, some places where there were refineries, basically where you have heavy industry is where we're not, and a lot of traffic is where we're not going to be meeting those standards. Now, so that means we've got work to do, okay? We need to keep making changes so that we can come into compliance. However, the EPA has projected, this is their modeling of just using regular policy without any drastic policy shift, who will not be in compliance in the year 2032. And you can see we're still one of these places that's likely to not be meeting that standard even 8 years from now. So that means we've got our work cut out for us in order to reach compliance. This will mean our county and our state will be operating outside of what is legally permissible. And so we're going to be changing our state's plan and our county's plan and all the local air permits for emitters so that we can come into compliance with these standards. So we've got our work to do, but it shows you what we need to do in order to be protecting the health of people in our county. Okay, so that's sort of like the background of what we're looking at. Now let's just do a little bit of sharing about what our region's impact has been for 100, 150 years of the burdens that our region has borne for this. So this is a photograph standing in up on the hill in Glassport, PA, looking across the Monongahela River. The U.S. Steel Irvin Works is located over here, and this is a rail yard. And this is a flare. This is about 5 rail cars length is the size of that flare. It's a massive flare. This operated for 101 days as the primary pollution control system for the Clairton Coke Works after the Christmas Eve fire of 2018, when, because of poor maintenance issues at that facility, a sprinkler system, a 4-inch pipe, corroded because there's so much sulfur in the air in the Clairton Coke Works. That pipe fell down, destroyed a compressor that was stripping out all the sulfur compounds from the effluent from the Clairton Coke Works. And it took all of their pollution control offline for 101 days. The plant still continued to operate, but we had organized people to try to get them to stop doing that. So one of the first things, so our health department didn't even notify the community that this was happening. This happened on Christmas Eve, and it wasn't until January 8th that it even became known. So we worked with a asthma specialist, a pediatric asthma specialist named Dr. Deborah Gentile, and she ran an asthma clinic in the Clareton Public Schools, and all of her kids that went away for the Christmas holiday who had their asthma under control came back when school started, and all their asthma was out of control. That was the first signal that something was wrong about what was happening in that community. And so we organized, to put pressure for something to be done about it. This is a surveillance hearing that took place in Clareton with the county health department, asking them to shut that plant down so that it wouldn't continue to pollute. But they didn't do that. They allowed them to keep operating and flaring. This was a state, Senate, and House public hearing in the Clareton Municipal Building on February 3rd of 2019 in response to what was going on in the community there. So you have several state senators, okay, and you have, this is the U.S. Steel team, and what you'll notice, a lot of people with orange clothing, these are steel workers that showed up at this hearing and occupied just about every seat in this hearing space. Out back here, there were about 80 community members who couldn't get in. They were being blocked. Their voices weren't allowed to be heard. Now, I was invited. This is my shoe right here. Same shoe as this one. There's Dr. Gentile. There's someone from Clareton Community. And then there was folks from Group Against Smog and Pollution. We provided testimony. It's a very hostile environment here that day. There were racist comments being made to State Senator Summer Lee, who was seated over here. It was an ugly moment in Western Pennsylvania history in trying to get some changes happening. Now, what I will say is this resulted in a citizen suit filed by Penn Environment, one of our collaborators, and Clean Air Council, and it took them 5 years, but they finally reached a settlement with U.S. Steel. The overall settlement was $42 million. It required $37 million in plant improvements and a $5 million penalty. And that was just assessed 2 weeks ago. So it took 5 years of battling to hold them to account for what they've done. And so, that penalty is now being assessed. Let's see, I hope my battery's not run out. Uh-oh. Oh, okay, it worked. Okay, so this is, I'm going to show a video now of something that happened just this past August. There was a storm that happened. This is on August 12th of just this last year. You're going to see some lightning. Okay, this is the Clareton Coke Works. You'll see some lightning, and then you'll see the power go out. And so this is the system that the Clareton Coke Works deploys when their power failure happens. They just burn this. This is untreated burning coal being released all across the whole facility. This went on for about 8 hours, okay, in August. And so what happens when this happens is the wind, actually, it depends on where the wind blows. Now, because it was stormy, this wind mostly blew to the east. So folks who lived in Westmoreland County, they were subjected to all the pollution. You can see the wind blowing some of this stuff that's going on here. So there are people that describe this facility as a doomsday machine because of what happened with that Clareton Coke Works fire, and now, 5 years later, of how they operate that facility. So this, and for people who live in the community, this is their daily experience. They deal with these sorts of things every day. The air smells like rotten eggs from the hydrogen sulfide. This facility violated the state's hydrogen sulfide standard 102 times in 2023. Their 20-year average of violations is 50 times per year. So they were worse last year than most of their 20-year history. Okay. So this is something that's going on in the Mon Valley. But like I said, it's not just the Mon Valley. By the way, this video is available on our breatheproject.org website under Tech Tools. We have cameras that operate 24/7, pointed at our region's most egregious polluters. And you can go and you can watch these on any given day. You know, it's very helpful. If you smell bad air, you might be able to go online and see when the emissions start happening at facilities like this. And we do this because if this video wasn't shown to people, it's almost like it never happened. Our regulators themselves are not being proactive enough to prevent stuff like this from happening, or even acknowledge that it does happen, absent evidence like that. So here's another video I want to show, and this is one that relates to Thaddeus and our friends at Allegheny County Clean Air Now. This is a metal recycler that crushes cars and runs cars through a shredder. So this happened in 2022 in May, where they didn't remove all the plastic and rubber from the cars, and they put it in the shredder, and the shredder caught on fire. And you know, some of the air quality pollution from this had concentrations in the 900 micrograms per cubic meter, where the average, you know, has to be below 35 for that day. Now what's being shown here there's a free app called Smell Pittsburgh, Smell PGH. If you smell bad air, you can report it, and it gets recorded, geocoded. So there were lots of smell reports from that, and this is actual data showing the spike in air pollution from that. And then this was what the Allegheny County alert happened. It actually was sent out, you know, the day later. You know, last night at 8:40, this was sent out 10:05 the next day. So the fire was out by then. So this just shows us that our notification system isn't anywhere near what it needs to be. So a lot of my, you know, stories here today are about the need to do hard work. But what I want to do is invite, because these cameras and the response here was from our friends at Allegheny County Clean Air Now, and Thaddeus was a founder of that, and it's actually a success story. So not all of this is just hard work and negative things. It also shows the power of what can happen when people come together and work together. So I'm going to plug in Thaddeus' video, and Thaddeus can say a few words, and I'll pass the mic to you as well.
Got a little bit of back and forth here today.
His joints work better than mine.
We need the water.
Okay, before he starts, the Heinz Endowments funded a study by the medical school at NYU, at New York University, after the Shenango Coke plant shut down. And it was a tremendous amount of data that came out that said the health outcomes were more than what was expected. They were great. Guess who picked up on that? The PBS network in the Netherlands. They picked up on that story, they called me and a few of my colleagues and said, "We want to talk to you. How did you do that? How did you shut down a coke plant which is part of a Fortune 500 company?" I says, "We work real hard at it. We work real hard at it." So we got interviewed, and the session came on their PBS network in all of the Netherlands. It was on their PBS network news, you might say, on December 15th at 6:15 p.m. So I will show the video that they put in. Some of it is in Dutch. If you know Dutch, you're okay. But those of us who are speaking English, they have Dutch subtitles. And they put this on a web page. It's a continuing fight they have with a steel company called Tata Steel, which comes out of India. They have 2 coke plants. They have 9,000 employees compared to 6,000 in one valley. And they're struggling to get them to do better work. So they have an investigative team working constantly in the Netherlands. So we were just one component of it. So they came, they saw how we conquered, you might say. Okay, so I'm ready if you are.
Daar, achter deze 3 woonwijken, Avalon, Ben Haven en Bellevue, op een eilandje midden in de Ohio-rivier, stond de Shenango Kooksfabriek. Ruim 50 jaar oud en goed voor 350.000 ton kooks per jaar om staal mee te maken.
There are 70,000 people who live in a 3-mile radius of here. So what was the cost to us as far as getting sick, as far as paying medical bills, maybe even dying? We keep hearing about jobs all the time, so how about the people that suffer? What's our value? We're human beings, we deserve some attention.
De Shenango Kooksfabriek zorgde tientallen jaren voor een zeer ongezonde omgeving. De inmiddels 77-jarige Tadeusz Popovic woonde in de buurt.
I once lived here on Virginia Avenue in Ben Haven, and this was at a time when Shenango Coke Works was at its worst. They were quenching where they would have great big billows of white smoke come up. Typically at nights, that's when it would smell the worst, and I was forced to have quintuple heart bypass surgery.
Na zijn hartoperatie vertelt een arts hem dat het inademen van ongezonde lucht mede de oorzaak van zijn hartaanval kan zijn. Popovic besluit in actie te komen.
So I figured other people didn't know what I knew, so I sort of led the way. I said, "This is really bad for your health. Let me tell you how it affected me."
Samen met buurtbewoners richt hij een actiegroep op. Ze praten met toezichthouders, de gemeente en houden bijeenkomsten in het lokale café.
It made you angry. You know, like, why are these people doing this? Why is this company allowed to do this in my home, you know, where my kid lives, where, you know, we're paying for this house and we can't enjoy it because of them.
If it was a bad day, well, and you wanted to have a barbecue outside, you couldn't. You had to shut the house down and close the windows and, you know, try to keep the stink out.
I used to think, like, I don't go and dump my garbage on their property, but they're constantly dumping the garbage here.
I knew it would be bad for my lungs, and as a musician who plays a wind instrument, I didn't, you know, that's a pretty big deal to me, my lungs.
De actiegroep probeert uit te zoeken hoeveel en wat de uitstoot van de kooksfabriek precies is. Maar toezichthouder kan niet 24 uur per dag.
We were smoke readers, our emissions evaluators, so we would be recording on paper the things that we saw as far as opacity, but we would also be taking pictures. So we would sit at that long table over there. That was our meeting place.
De echte doorbraak komt pas als we samen gaan werken met studenten en technici van het Robotics Institute van de Carnegie Mellon University. Yen Yashi is een van hen. Hij bouwt samen met de anderen een AI-programma met camera's en sensoren.
This is actually the interface. There are some sensor reads, so they measure very fine and small particles in here. At the bottom part there is a smoke detection. We have actually tools for sharing video clip, so they can share and then they can output like video clips like that. But that's very manual because they have to check all the.
They have to watch the whole thing.
Yes, in the entire. And we just think, what if I just automate a part of that, so we can just show some small clips.
Is this AI?
Oh yeah.
So the most egregious moments he was able to pick out.
Popovic en zijn actiegroep organiseren een grote bijeenkomst waar ze gemeenteambtenaren, de directie van de fabriek en landelijke toezichthouder EPA uitnodigen om naar hun beelden te kijken.
What you see in the video over there, in my mind, is totally unacceptable. So,
And he got a rousing applause for that.
So he's the EPA director for air.
3 weeks later, the parent company announced they were shutting down the plant.
And we
This is actually the first time that I know if we use technologies, if we build it with people, and if we collaborate together with communities, then it can create a lot of social impact. And I think that's very powerful.
De fabriek sluit in 2016 en wordt een paar jaar later helemaal gesloopt. Deze zomer wordt er een medisch onderzoek gepresenteerd met de gezondheidsgevolgen na deze sluiting. De resultaten zijn opzienbarend.
The results were very dramatic. As soon as
so this is the director of research
a week or two, the emergency department visits dropped about 40% for cardiovascular causes.
wow.
And also they also dropped for respiratory causes. After that, the visits and admissions tended to drop off over time, over years.
Professor George Thurston is directeur van de afdeling Milieugeneeskunde van de New York University. Hij is gespecialiseerd in gezondheidseffecten van luchtvervuiling.
I'm sure that there certainly were lives saved by the closure of this plant.
Thurston denkt dat zijn onderzoek zeker ook relevant kan zijn voor andere plekken in de wereld, zoals hier in Nederland bij Tata Steel Slemaren.
I do think that the results are applicable to other coking plants elsewhere in the world. Now, it has universal relevance to other places where people are burning fossil fuels, and especially, coal.
He's a professional harmonicist.
It's remarkable how when I drive from my house down into Ben Avenue now, how I always knew that there would be a haze, like pollution coming over from Neville Island, and it really took me a long time to realize that wasn't happening anymore. It was clear and crisp.
There's quiet. You can breathe the air, and it's. I feel like I'm on another planet.
So that's where the coke plant used to be, where I was standing. Thank you, Cliff. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what you
Maybe I was late to the party. I had to step away for a minute. What news agency was that?
Did I hear a question out there?
Yeah. What was the name of the news agency that did that reporting? Was it
I say it again.
It was in Dutch, right?
Yes, in Dutch.
So why didn't America talk about this?
Good question.
I mean, my gosh.
Good question.
I mean, so it's got.
So we're trying to leverage up. I'm going to go to WQED,
Okay.
a sister accomplice, you might say so, and show them what the Dutch did. So this went all over the Netherlands, the PBS News Hour. Okay.
Well, doesn't that just go to show you they care about it? We don't. Well, some
Well,
of us don't.
yeah, well, then you might ask the question, why do they have such a god-awful steel plant there, too?
Oh,
Yeah, so they let that happen. They let that
okay.
happen, okay.
Thank you.
Thaddeus, when was this produced?
In December.
December, so,
Yeah, this is recent stuff, yeah. So you can help me get the word out so that we can show this nationwide.
Absolutely.
So that New York University study is really an amazing thing where they were able to show that 40%, 60% reduction and so on. So here's the key thing that people need to know though. That's fabulous. The Shenango Coke plant is 1/10 the size of the Clairton Coke Works. Okay. That's why it's so important for us to pay attention to that. These numbers, if you look at the top 10 remaining pollution sources in Allegheny County, the U.S. Steel facilities in the Mon Valley Works account for 78% of the particle pollution. Those particles are what cause the respiratory disease, they're what cause cancer, they're what cause bladder cancer, they're what cause the heart attacks and heart disease. So that's why we pay so much attention. It feels like we're picking on one company, but that's because we have to. And the reason why is these are the charts. There are 3 plants that make up the Mon Valley Works. The American Coke Works, the Edgar Thompson plant, and the Irvin Works. They all are interconnected. They use the co-products and the gases and the coal from each other. And what this chart is showing is that going back to the year 2010, there's no improvement in performance on any of these plants. So our airshed, we've been able to show that the air coming into Allegheny County has gotten 40% cleaner over this period of time. The county's air as a whole has gotten better by 20%. Only half of the upwind. None of those improvements come from anything that's been done to hold these facilities to account. It's all the closure of the Cheswick power plant, or the closure of the Shenango Coke Works, or upwind sources. And then what does that tell you? It tells you that our regulator is not doing its job to hold these people accountable. These stats come from our county health department, by the way. You can go on their dashboard and they'll show you this. They know this. So now this is the first answer as to why it takes 45 or 50 groups of people to try to change things. We are making progress, but you don't just get there easily. They were able to get there by about 5 years worth of advocacy work, maybe longer. We're just getting started. There was a question here. Yeah.
Does the technology exist to do this short of raising the plant, to improve significantly?
Yeah, well, so yes and no. So there were some batteries at this Clairton Coke Works that were built in the Truman administration. Okay. So those have all been closed. So because of the advocacy work, about 1/3 of the capacity of the Clairton Coke Works, through these settlement agreements and so on, they've agreed to shutter those. So they've reduced 1/3 of capacity at that plant. Now we haven't, I showed you the air stats, that plant leaks through many, many places. So the answer is it requires massive amounts of reinvestment. And I would just ask that you hold that, because I want to show you some things that talk about that specifically. So after that Coke Works fire, U.S. Steel had pledged $1 billion to fix these plants up. But then it was actually $1.5 billion. Then, a May following, they said, you know what, never mind. They spent $6 billion buying electric arc furnaces in Arkansas. Okay.
Different technology, steel manufacturing.
Different, right. And it's also a non-union right-to-work state in Arkansas with much lower wages. Okay. But that's not the only thing that they did. Their stock price in March of 2020 was $5.29. This is after all the bad publicity that happened. U.S. Steel engaged in $1.4 billion in stock buybacks that ended in the first quarter of 2023. Then they announced that the company's for sale. The sale price is $55 a share. Here's the announcement of the sale at the end of 2023. It traded on Friday at just under $50 a share. So this is what the priorities of the management of U.S. Steel have been. Invest in Arkansas, buy back shares of stock, knowing that they were going to sell the company, so they juiced it so that they make a huge windfall. Huge. And so going on television and saying, well, steel is a national security issue, the management of U.S. Steel, they are not concerned about that at all. The only thing that they've been concerned about, and this has been true throughout the history of this company, and I can say that because I have 3 generations of steelworkers in my family prior to me, is the money. That's all that they care about, which is why the plants are in the conditions that they're in. So, who wins? The shareholders win. Shares skyrocket after that. Now, these are people in Allegheny County who are vulnerable to this pollution. These are people we have to care about. We have to keep people in mind that even though on a yellow air quality day it might be okay for me to go outside, but there are thousands of people in our county where that yellow air quality day is a serious health risk to them. So we need to be thinking about that when we do our policy making here. Our county, top 1% of counties nationwide for cancer risk from point source air pollution. Of the 1,000 so counties, I think we're ranked 23rd of 1,000 something counties. Cancer rates higher, 50% higher than the rest of the U.S. And then here's a key statistic. 90% of point source cancer risk is attributable to coke oven emissions, with 90% of those coming from just this one facility. Our region's cancer problem goes to that facility more than anything else. Okay. We also have some issues with diesel particulates and vehicle emissions too. This is showing the cancer rates in the Clarendon Cook Works being higher, but the entire region has elevated cancer risk. So we still have work to do. Now, what does our region go and do? We add a cracker plant to it. Okay. This is where the decision making, we're working on holding people accountable for making bad decisions and also trying to redirect investment. This is a video just from last year of the smoke coming out of one of the flares of the Beaver County plant, which, by the way, were given generous emissions permits for startup by the state DEP. They blew through those limits within 6 months. That's why they have been fined $12 million, and they haven't even started the plant in production yet. Okay, now $12 million sounds like a lot of money, and it is for normal people. But for Shell, which has a $78 billion earnings before income, net income, $78 billion, this is the cost of a cup of coffee for an average family at an average level income. So we have this problem of what I call pay to pollute. U.S. Steel, since January 1st of 2020, has paid $12 million in fines and had that settlement of $42 million. So it's what, $64 million in penalties? But they just pay it. They pay it. So we have, and then, the rail disaster, we have trains that carry these materials through our communities. This is the main line where they want to start increasing traffic right through the heart of the city of Pittsburgh. Okay, this is Norfolk Southern. They haven't been able to do it because some of these bridges wouldn't accommodate it. So there was a campaign to try to stop them, but that's all been ended now, and our state is allowing them to start shipping all this stuff. This goes by all of our hospitals, our stadiums. East Palestine couldn't happen here unless we advocate for the rail policies that need to be pushed going forward. So that's something else that's on our plate. You can see we take on some pretty big issues here. And this was the derailment that happened in Station Square. There's a derailment that happened yesterday in the eastern part of the state, the Norfolk Southern train, where there are cars in the river in northeastern Pennsylvania. And then they plan on running 100 trains a day through the city. That's the equivalent of 6,800 diesel buses of pollution through the heart of our city. Then we deal with pipelines. So this is the Revolution pipeline, which is taking frack gas and shipping it for processing. And this blew up in Beaver County. It destroyed this hillside. Thankfully, no one was killed. And this was all sold to us as a way to keep our utility bills low. Well, guess what? When you tie electricity to natural gas, then most people here are experiencing increases in electricity bill last year. It's because it's tied to that commodity now. And they're talking about at People's Gas raising the rates at People's Gas now. Okay, so all of the economic rationale for doing this was just a way to get people hooked on, continue to be hooked on fossil fuels. Okay, so, and then there's a leadership problem that happens here. So this is the root of it. The Allegheny Conference released this report in 2023 called Our Region's Energy Future. It shows the carbon reductions proposed for these different sectors. You'll notice that by the year 2030, they proposed no reductions in carbon from any aspect of our industrial infrastructure. Nothing. The power, the blue, goes from 26 to 13, cutting it in half. They chose 2019. This was released in 2023. They chose 2019 because that was before the closure of the Cheswick Power Plant. So all of these reductions here are essentially the reductions from a plant that was already closed. Then you've got, some slight reductions in transit. This is, our region's climate plan, and it's our health plan, and it asks for almost nothing. Then in the same report, they have where they're looking for funding. Up at the top is carbon capture and sequestration, which is a technology that doesn't really work. At the very bottom, solar and wind energy. This is what our region's leadership has set as policy for us. And I hate to say it, I like our governor. He released an economic development report 2 weeks ago that basically says we're an all of the above energy state in Pennsylvania, where these priorities are being now touted at the state level. So, what did we do a few years ago? We wrote this letter basically saying, we're tired of this game that gets played. We need leadership to center on these values. Improving the health of communities. Good faith partners that keep promises, not promise something and then say, oh, by the way, we're going to Arkansas instead. Respecting residents' right to clean air and water. This is in our state's constitution. We are one of the few states that guarantees the right in our constitution for clean air and water and healthy land. We need to stand up to protect these rights. Investment in people, not in industries. We need to fix the short-term air pollution problems, but set things right for the long haul. And then family-sustaining jobs. So we saw with the cracker plant, at one time 5,600 people working there, but they're all gone now. Those were mostly people that came from outside of our region. They follow these projects around the world. Our state gave a $1.6 billion tax subsidy to import workers to come and then leave. These are the decisions that need to change. So this is why it takes this number of people to do something about it. Okay, so these are some takeaways. We have to be in dialogue with community. The people who are suffering, we need to listen to them the most and do what we can to lift them up to get the investment that they need. The second thing, care about people. Look at, there's all these ideas that the Department of Energy is trying to fund that are these, we'll call them techno band-aids that don't really work, but we're subsidizing them at the billions of dollars level. The Edgar Thompson Works got a $4.3 million subsidy from the Department of Energy for a pilot carbon capture system. Their pilot so far captures 1 ton of CO2. The Claret and Coke were in like the 30 days that it operated. That one facility generates 5,000 tons of that per year. And there's a big gap between what that technology can do and what it needs to do. And we're subsidizing it. Okay. So, and then we have to do something about this pay-to-pollute system. Like, there's a coke plant in western New York that was closed. We looked at that one too. It's called Tonawanda Coke. Those folks were criminally prosecuted by the New York Attorney General. And those managers were sent to jail. Okay? Our state rarely, if ever, does that. We have all these civil penalties that accrue that enable pay to pollute. And by the way, they establish these funds, the community applies for money, it creates this like internal competition among community groups to fight over money. Okay, it's a lot of stress on the community. And then the companies try to tout this as if it's a charitable contribution. So, and sometimes it's a tax write-off. So we need to do something about that. So there's a lot that we have to work on. Now the hopeful thing is the EPA has changed those standards. The EPA has told the county health department the permits that they tried to push through in January of this year, both the Claire and Coke Works and the Edgar Thompson Works, that those permits are not acceptable. You can't say that you're going to meet emissions limits at an hourly level, but test once every 3 years to see whether that's happening. Go back and do it again. This seems like common sense stuff, but that's what's going on right now. So we are making progress. And we are in dialogue with the folks at Nippon Steel, so that if they do come in and this transaction occurs, that maybe there's a cultural reorientation towards not harming people to make profit. And we're hoping that that dialogue can spur some sort of change going forward. But there's so much up in the air with respect to U.S. Steel. But I will say that rather than fix the problem, the shareholders decided to sell and walk away, because that's what they're doing. So in any event, and then we have friends here from Beaver County that are organizing daily and holding Shell accountable, and our DEP, and we work with them to support their work as well too. So anyhow, that's sort of the overview of today, and we can talk a little bit more here as a group. And if you want to get in touch, there's one.
All right. Coke.
May I say something first? Okay. Before anybody leaves, there are handouts here on the table. Take as many as you want, give them to your friends. It's a way of spreading the news. There's other things on Slide, Page Magazine, and many of the things that Matt was talking about. So if you want to help your memory, take some of these things with you.
Coke and coking operations are never going to go away totally. So, what might be a solution? I know that steel manufacturing is going, you know, the basic oxygen furnace and the need for coke in that, and the distilled products from coking operations that makes creosote and benzene and a lot of other products. That's probably never going to go away. So if you had a magic wand and you could say, all right, coke operations in the United States, we need to have some level of coke operation in the United States. How would we do it? Where would we do it? And if we provided a positive incentive to do it the right way and do it in the least invasive environmental way, wouldn't that be good policy? And another side question is our geography and our meteorologic conditions in Allegheny County, western Pennsylvania, are unique, and they put us at a disadvantage, if you will, to disperse pollutants. And that makes doubly bad for us to have these industries in this area. So brief comment on that bit, and then a bigger question. If you had the magic wand, what would be a solution for coking? Where would it be? How would we do it? Is there a positive path for the industry if we could shut down, the Claritin Works and thoughts?
Yeah, so thanks for those. They're thoughtful questions. I'll try to remember them and address them all. The first thing I want to say is regard to coking. So there's no long-term pathway for cocaine in our world. None. Zero. And the reason for that is there are already alternatives that are being scaled up throughout the world. So to get into just a little bit of chemistry, when you mine iron ore, it's got oxygen attached to the iron. That's what makes iron brittle. So you heat it up and you throw carbon in there, and that carbon grabs the oxygen and makes the steel strong. You put other stuff in there too, but that's basically what's going on. And it's hard to, like a lot of these electric arc furnaces, they're recycled scrap steel, and you can't make steel purely in those electric arc furnaces. However, the quality is different. However, there are processes that have invented that use hydrogen to grab out the oxygen. And so there's a place called Boston Metals that is out of MIT. There are 3 or 4 facilities being built in Germany and the Netherlands and in Sweden that are hydrogen dependent. You don't use coke. You don't need it. So it takes a while to build these. So these are very capitally intensive industries. So whatever gets built today is going to be around for 30 years. So that's why this is such a pivotal moment in our region with what Nippon Steel is going to do. If there's no business reason to continue to invest in a plant that is 100 years old, that uses 150-year-old technology, when these other alternatives are out there and are getting the money to be brought up online. So our region needs to decide where we want to go. Do we want to be tied to the equivalent of the jalopy, that the wheels fall off, that everybody knows is going to go away? I don't think we'll see coking plants beyond 10 years in the world. Between 5 and 10 years is like the lifetime of that. So anyone who works in this industry needs to start thinking now about how do we transition to where the future is going to be. So that, is the issue. There's an interim step where it is possible to get hydrogen through steam reformed methane. You take the methane gas, and you subject it to high steam, and that will strip off the hydrogen, and that actually is the most current way of how hydrogen is produced. But methane has carbon in it, so it's not carbon-free, and so that also is not a long-term solution. The real answer is you take water molecules, you split them in half with renewable energy, and then use that hydrogen for steelmaking. That's where the world is going on all of this. We have to figure out how to subsidize the infrastructure to get there if we want to have a steel industry in our part of the country. Otherwise, we will be left with a polluting, toxic, the cash cow that will eventually go away, and everyone, will experience pollution going forward. So that's that part of your question. The magic wand is for people to see it and to actually say, let's figure out how to do this here. What do we need to do to bring the people together? Our senators, our Congress people, folks at the Department of Energy, to resist the temptation to go down this carbon capture Band-Aid that won't work over the long haul and waste billions of dollars. We know what the right answer is for the long haul, so we need to start investing there. And I'm sorry I forgot the second question.
Our meteorological...
the inversions, yeah. So yes, we do have, I did show some charts that show from September through December, and then in the spring we get these temperature inversions. We know from the data that that actually makes 50% of the problem of exposure in the Mon Valley from those temperature inversions. The answer there is ask the company to not emit overnight when we know there's a forecast of inversion. That could improve our air quality significantly. Now, people who operate plants like that don't like interference with their operations, but as an interim, that's a reasonable thing for people to request. So, you know, we have the data that shows that that's a possibility. That if there's a forecast for temperature inversions, which they're very good at forecasting those facilities that pollute in river valleys change their operations so that people are not impacted. And that's, if you look at the Smell Pittsburgh results, you can see starting at 6 a.m. people get up in the morning, they smell terrible air, they register that it smells, and it comes from emissions that happen overnight that are trapped by these temperature inversions. So we know that that is part of the issue. But those don't cause pollution, they just augment it. Yeah, question?
In light of that policy of pay to pollute, my sense would be if they have those kind of dollars, they probably invested in lobby groups at governmental levels.
Absolutely.
So as far as just a strategy in order to try to get at something when you don't have the dollars to do it, my sense is it publicity? Is it get the word out? Is that the type of strategy?
Yeah, it's why I'm here. It's also why, well, working with regulators. So if our air is not in compliance, even though we pick on U.S. Steel, it's actually the state and our county that are responsible for us to meet the air quality standards. So we have a new county executive. We've been meeting with them, giving guidance on who a new health department director should be, because they will have the experience to understand these things and be willing to take action. It's going to involve removing the capture of industry from the health department. U.S. Steel chairs the Pollution Prevention and Education Subcommittee at the Allegheny County Health Department. Yeah, I wish I could, I was just making that up. I go to these meetings. The last meeting I went to, the Air Advisory Committee, in December of last year, which was at the CCAC building on the north side, they had Pittsburgh Works Together as a lobby group for industry. They brought a report that basically says, our air is no worse than Indianapolis, so we should just be okay. Now that's cherry, but we could get into the details of why that's bogus. But the people on the county's committee said, thank you for sharing this. I get so sick of hearing what the American Lung Association says about our air quality. You know, and I had to stand up and say, let me get this straight. Our county health department is accepting the story that an industry lobby group is giving them while disparaging a nonprofit that is dedicated to improving health throughout the country in our region. You know, so those changes are doable. Okay, we're working to try to get, if you want to serve on a board, there is a place to go. It's all together Pittsburgh, all in Pittsburgh. Get your name in there. You can serve on one of these committees and not have it be captured. So that is a really hopeful thing. We also have Anita Prizio here, who's county council rep. She chairs the sustainability committee. She's working on getting a climate action plan for the county, something that we should have had 15 years ago. But thank goodness she's pushing for it. We've pulled together a whole group of people, the Green New Deal people, a lot of the nonprofit groups, and we're getting a climate action plan together that will also help, you know, put the pressure and steer the policy in the direction that it needs to go in. Talk to your reps, make sure that they know air quality is an important thing, because it does make a difference. County council, for the first time in its history, actually has a voice and actually is in a position to do something. It's what that institution was intended to do from the beginning,
but it's been captured for its 20-something years in existence. So thank you, Anita, for the work that you do, and I appreciate your being here.
I don't know if I need a mic, but I was just going to say, so it just seems as if there's so much misinformation between, or collusion between politics and money. And so where's the best place to direct our energy? Because it's really dizzying when you hear about all these different levels of government that are working against our interests. So is it through the new county commissioner, the county executive?
It's
Is
very
it through the county council? Is
Yes.
it both? Because I've really been disillusioned by what Shapiro has done.
Unfortunately, yes. So we are going to need to have an accountability campaign for our governor. Because we are going to need to have an accountability campaign for our governor, because he seems to be going in directions that we didn't expect. Supporting, the federal government matters too. Under the Biden administration, we've moved forward with these rules. That PM rule that I said was just passed this year, it was supposed to be updated in 2020. The Trump administration EPA director sank it, despite the fact that public health people said, this needs to be improved. They buried the evidence, they disbanded the committee, they sank the whole thing.
That's why I say we can't count on the federal government. God forbid that would change.
Hopefully not, but we need people to vote. We need people to vote for an EPA that actually protects, because it makes a big difference on who is in the White House.
Right, it does. But at the local level, I guess if you could help voters decide which candidates are the best ones to vote for.
Yeah, that's right. So, the group, so this is why we have a partnership. So the conservation voters of PA and Clean Water Action generally release scorecards for elected officials for who is, doing things to help protect health and who is not. The Breathe Project doesn't lobby because we're a not-for-profit, but we can educate and we can collaborate. And so Penn Environment also does that sort of work as well too. Following those groups, which you can get by emailing me and I can put you in touch with all of those folks. Become a member and get their newsletters, and then you'll know what's going on in Harrisburg and nationally. Yes?
Thanks for all you do, Matt.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a Methodist pastor, so I'm going to give you some good news. I'm a Girl Scout leader, and the Girl Scouts have, about badges, I'm sure, but they have something called a journey now, which takes a much longer time to do. And the journey my middle school cadet Girl Scouts have been doing since school started in August is called Breathe. And Thaddeus and I became friends last year at the Martin Luther King breakfast, and have had wonderful adventures. I was here to hear the children singing liturgy last year about this time during Lent. I'm glad to be back. But I want to share the good news. So this Breathe journey, I want to tell you about it in case you have a Girl Scout who's middle school age. You can talk to them to encourage the leader to try it. It is looking at a number of different things, including noise pollution, but also outdoor air pollution, indoor air pollution, and climate change in general. Those are the topics that we looked at in the fall for this journey that we've been doing all school year. And we had guest speakers come in for different parts of that, and Thaddeus coached us for the outdoor air pollution and gave us all the stuff we needed. He wasn't able to come to an actual meeting, but he gave us everything we needed to have an awesome meeting. And then a meeting to talk about climate change. Right? Now these are 12 and 13-year-old girls, 6th and 7th graders in my troop. There's only 7 of them, right? But we've been going through this process, which is helping them learn things they don't learn in school, and from people. And then the journey has a Take Action project. And the goal of the Take Action project is not just we're going to go pick up litter at North Park. We did that last year on Earth Day, but that's not a Take Action project. You have to talk about the root causes of the problem you're looking at and think about what we can do to address the root causes to make the world a better place, which is one of our Girl Scout laws. So we factored in all of those things we learned in the fall before Christmas, and our meeting in January fashion project do we want to do? And it's supposed to be girl-led, which is a little bit tricky for moms who are used to doing it, right? And we, the whole society is used to doing everything for our kids, right? So I tried to backpedal as much as I could, but also try to guide to something that's going to be successful, and to piggyback with things that are already happening. So, and Thaddeus had introduced me to Anita at this year's Martin Luther King breakfast. So I did have a few suggestions in there, but let them think about it too, and really decide what they want to do. So this is what they're going to do. It's not quite directly to air pollution, but it's tying in to Allegheny County. We are going to, at our meeting on Tuesday, one of the dads is a web designer. He's going to help us design a website talking about why it's important to stop using throwaway bags and start carrying our own reusable bags everywhere we go, every time we shop. And the website will have, one team is working on the why page, why this is important, and we'll add statistics, and we'll tap into your stuff and gather things to make some good succinct why this is important to make this change, because we have to change a habit. Right? How do we change everybody's habit in Allegheny County? That's hard. Right? Pittsburgh's trying, and then it's nice that they're easing in and not penalizing people immediately. But there's some businesses, and Anita was saying, that are like, wait, we can't handle this, right? So how do we do this? Well, so we'll do the why first. If people have the why, then they'll be more willing to make their own personal changes. Then we have another team of the girls are working on the how page. How do you change your habits? Right? I've been trying to make this change myself for years. And I go to the grocery store with my own bags. If I go through where I'm paying the checkout person, and I care about social justice, I'd love to pay the checkout person, that person keeps shoving my stuff into plastic bags, even though I have their bags. Like, hey, so I have to so part of the how is if I'm going where there's a checkout person, I have to put the bag on the counter when I put my purchase on the counter and say, here, use my plastic bag. And if they start to automatically use the plastic bag, very nicely say, no, please use my bag. I don't want a plastic bag. Right? So there's how to make these changes. And it's a matter of teaching each other, right? Ourselves, and part of my how is making sure those bags are in my car every day and I have one in my purse. Right? So there's certain things. So I'm sorry, I'm excited about this. I'm glad to have this partnership. And there are ways we can be helping one another to make these changes and to help each other talk about them. So if any of you have any girls and Girl Scouts who are in middle school or heading to middle school, tell them that they can do this wherever they are. Right? And so journeys, you have to do a journey before you can do the Silver Award, which is the second highest award in Girl Scouting. Well, our journey is a springboard, so my 7 girls will end up doing 3 different Silver Awards in teams. They can't have more than 3 people on a team, so probably 3 different Silver Awards. But one can go and say, oh, we love what Matt's doing. We want to try to figure it out. We want to be videotaped and make a videotape that goes with Matt to explain. Or maybe we can invite Matt to come and do a STEM talk in our middle school when the teacher wants a free assembly, the principal wants a free assembly anyway, and Matt would come and do a free assembly, and then we get some converts, right? So maybe that's what they want to do. I can't tell them what to do, but my girls, part of the plan too was some of them want to learn how to sew. That was one of their goals back in August when we met. Well, we know some people who have sewing machines at the Olive Branch store, the Methodist store on Route 19. They're going to teach us how to sew and make reusable bags, and those bags are going to be the prize. So when you come to our website and you take our quiz, they'll be put into a drawing, and someone will get a handmade bag by our Girl Scout troop. And then we get the statistics to see who's watching and who's learning, right? And not only that, but we want to extend this bag ban to Allegheny County, so we're talking to Anita, and I asked one of my girls, now these are 12, 13-year-olds, can any of you imagine giving a 3-minute speech in April, Earth Day month? One of my 7th graders raised her hand. Ivy's going to go and give her a 3-minute speech. We're going to help her for our April meeting, design the speech, practice the speech, and as many of us as can will go with her for that meeting. And Anita will be there, she's our friend. And that's another part, like make new friends and keep the old Girl Scouts on. Right? You use your friends, your connections, and you share this information. So anyway, I'm really excited.
See, you can tell.
And I'm thankful for being here, and thank you for putting this on. And tell your friends and have another one. Right? You go on to another organization and invite Matt to come to that.
Just to put the extra there's Autumn. They're going to be at a Giant Eagle, right?
Oh, yes, Giant Eagle is allowing us, oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
just the good part.
So we decided not to sell Girl Scout cookies anymore, or the magazine nut sale in the fall. This is the second year in a row. Don't tell the Girl Scout Council yet. I mean, they kind of know, but I'm not trying to diss all of it. But we are using our cookie booth time. Every troop in the service unit can have certain time at Giant Eagles. I talked to the Giant Eagle exec. The only time they will let us talk to customers about this bag thing is during cookie booth sale, because they've already got the red tape taken care of for girls being there then. So instead of selling cookies, come to McIntyre Square on St. Patrick's Day. In the morning or the afternoon, we'll be there 4 full hours telling about bags. You can send your friends and neighbors. And Giant Eagle said that they're going to give us reusable bags to give to people as we're talking to them. We'll give them a flyer about our website. So yes.
And Giant Eagle has a program. Next year, they're going to ban the use of plastic bags in the Giant Eagle stores.
But we're going to help people change their habits so it won't be so hard.
And they're going to go in front of county council and they're going to testify.
Great, that's fabulous. Marcia, and then I think you had a comment too.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
go.
no, I'm Marcia, Weaver County Marcellus Alertness Community, UCMAC. And we have a monthly program, first Wednesday of the month, Zoom, Eyes on Shell. I have cards here, QR code, if anybody wants to register for that. But just so you all know that Shell is not your petrochemical facility that's making anything about gas that's coming to your house. It's making plastic. How many nurdles per year, how many billions of tons of nurdles per year does Shell manufacture? I always forget the number because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah, I forget.
But so and they make single-use plastic too, just like she's talking about. So yeah, you know the thing is, it's just maddening when so many elected officials still try to sell us when they're talking about Shell and all the wonderful things about Shell, having Shell in our community. They still try to sell us on this is some kind of a benefit of natural gas facility that's coming into your house. A Wall Street Journal, a Democrat, Ryan from Ohio. Dear Terry, she's with Clear Air Council in Weaver County. She just wrote a letter to the editor responding to Tim Ryan's telling the wonders of Shell, and never once said this is a plastic facility that's making plastic that we no longer really want, and the global community is now, looks with disdain on plastic. So is this even what kind of a market-driven debacle is this going to be for Shell? Why did they ever come here in the first place? So anyway.
One of our county commissioners went down to DC and said, this is about energy independence, our Shell plant. I mean, the commissioner said that.
And Tim Ryan from Ohio, the Wall Street Journal, made it sound like it was, he never identified it as plastic. He made it sound like it was something that's going to help us with our gasoline and our gas coming to our homes. And they still do it. This was the Wall Street Journal editorial. This week.
And another part of this giant web of infrastructure that comes from this industry is that fracking feeds the Shell plant. Fracking feeds the Shell plant. Fracking infrastructure has its own host of health impacts. And then the Shell plant makes plastic.
That takes your water.
Take your water. Thank you. But I do have cards here if anybody. I have a few cards left.
Is there a comment over here? Question?
Yeah,
Yes.
I use a mail-in ballot every year, and I tend to vote early, and I can never find any information about candidates, especially local candidates. I mean, the League of Women Voters puts something out, and maybe the paper late puts something out, but is there a way you can find out what the environmental stance of candidates are, and if there isn't, how can you make that important?
Yeah, the best places, again, are the conservation voters of Pennsylvania, and the
searching on them, it doesn't come up. It's like,
I understand.
How do you make that work?
There should be more investment in that. There should be more investment in that, right? I would just say it's not adequately covered.
Yeah. But I think if it was made important to the candidates.
We did do with Sarah Innamorato. Okay, I moderated an environmental justice forum for all the county council, or for all the county executive candidates, took place in Wilkinsburg in May of last year, right before the primary that happened. There was a big turnout. It really did differentiate some of the candidates that were there, particularly around whether they'd allow fracking in the county, in parks and things like that. So, you know, for local races, I think it's important for community groups to actually organize things like that. Have a forum. You know, I live in Richmond Township. I know that the state rep contest is going to be a heated one that's coming up. And, you know, we should organize a forum so that people can be asked about these questions, about, you know, the environment, protecting our children, and so on going forward. It takes work. If there's one takeaway that is hard to convey, the world that I grew up in, which has conditioned me and many people to believe that elected officials somehow have our best interest and they're going to work on our behalf, is a habit that needs to be broken. That it requires meetings just like this, repeated in communities all over the county and all over the state. And when we do that, then we will actually see a change. Because when candidates get called out, you can move them. But if they detect a vacuum, or they're just allowed to be influenced by lobbyists, then things just keep going down the direction that they're going down. So it takes a lot of work. You can't kid yourself that this is easy. It's hard work.
Now, with Protect Franklin Park, text relays work really very well. Do we have the money to do that? Because I find them very effective.
Right. Well, you all built that. How long did it take you to build Protect Franklin Park?
We had help from Food and Water Watch. Yep. They paid for it.
Right. But that's okay. That's why organizations like yours can help. And you've got, what, 7 or 8 years into Protect Franklin Park?
Well, not that quite, but...
5?
Yeah. 5, yeah. So
but it shows that it can work. Yeah. You know, once you pull it together, it actually...
You show up at all the meetings.
Right.
We showed up at all the meetings. And they couldn't refuse us.
Right. Okay. It's not easy work. No. You have to sit through boring meetings. A lot of times you get treated like garbage when you do, but if you stick to the game, you can actually change the game. And so anyhow, I want to thank you all for your attention today.
Before that leaves, I'm going to give him a gift of a book called Braiding Sweetgrass. It's about indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teaching of plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I heard her lecture in Chautauqua last year. It's a great book. She's an indigenous person, so she's close to the earth, if you will, closer than we are. So I'm going to give this to Matt, and he'll...
It means a lot coming from a good friend. I really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. So I hope you all have a nice Sunday, and thanks for coming out. And I'm happy to follow up with anything. Very good, very good.